It was not a scream that started this story. It was a knock. Soft, polite, ordinary, in quiet American neighborhoods. Late at night, under streetlights blurred by rain. Doors opened because nothing felt wrong. The man standing outside did not rush. He did not threaten. He smiled. He knew names. He knew schedules. He knew who lived alone. When women vanished, there were no alarms. No broken windows. No evidence of a crime. Cars stayed parked. Phones stayed charging. Homes looked untouched. Investigators searched for force and found none. They searched for violence and found silence. Neighbors remembered him only after it was too late. A man walking calmly away. A figure disappearing into fog. Years passed, families waited. Cases gathered dust. Until one detail returned again and again. The same presence, the same timing, the same calm confidence. This is not a story about monsters hiding in the dark. It is a story about trust, about how easily it is earned, and how devastating it can be when given to the wrong person. Because sometimes the most dangerous person does not break in. Sometimes you invite him inside. The call came in at 2:17 a.m. No screaming, no panic. Just a woman's calm voice saying, "I think someone was in my house." By the time police arrived, the front door was locked, windows untouched, lights still on in the hallway, and she was gone. Her name was Emily Carter, 29 years old, a night shift nurse who never missed work and never stayed out late. Her phone was found charging on the kitchen counter. Her car still sat in the driveway. Her purse, wallet, ID, cash was exactly where she always left it. There were no signs of a struggle, no forced entry, no fingerprints that didn't belong. It was as if Emily had simply stepped outside for a moment and vanished into the dark. At first, detectives treated it like a voluntary disappearance. Adults leave all the time, they said, but that theory collapsed within hours. Emily had left her shoes by the door. She was barefoot. Neighbors reported something strange. Around 1:40 a.m., several people noticed a man walking calmly down the street. Average height, dark jacket, no urgency. One neighbor assumed he was lost. Another thought he was knocking on doors, asking for help. No one called it in. Security cameras caught fragments of him. Always just out of focus, always facing away. In one clip, he pauses under a streetlight, looks directly toward Emily's house, and then the footage glitches. The same man appeared again, 3 nights later. Different street, different woman, same pattern, unlocked door, no noise, no evidence. Detectives began to realize something terrifying. This wasn't random. Whoever he wasn't breaking in. He was being led inside. And by the time anyone understood the pattern, it was already too late. Because Emily Carter wasn't the first, and she wouldn't be the last. The investigation began quietly. Too quietly? In the first 48 hours after Emily Carter vanished, police treated the case as low risk. She was an adult. There was no sign of violence, no ransom call, no note, no evidence that a crime had even occurred. Her family was told to wait. Friends were told she might return on her own. But time moved differently inside Emily's house. Her mother walked through the rooms, slowly touching familiar objects. A coffee mug in the sink, a folded blanket on the couch. The faint smell of laundry detergent still clinging to the air. Everything felt paused. As if Emily might walk back in at any moment and ask why everyone looked so worried. She never did. Detectives eventually shifted focus when Emily missed 3 scheduled shifts in a row. That alone was unheard of. Emily had worked through flu, through exhaustion, through grief. She had never once failed to call. They pulled phone records. Nothing. Her phone had not left the house. No outgoing messages. No missed calls. It simply stopped. Credit cards showed no activity. Bank accounts untouched. Social media silent. No searches. No drafts. No goodbye messages hidden in private folders. It was a digital blackout. Investigators canvassed the neighborhood again. This time slower. This time with urgency. One neighbor mentioned the man in the dark jacket again. Another recalled hearing a door close softly sometime after midnight. Not a slam, not a bang. Just the sound of someone leaving like they belonged there. Security footage became the center of the case. Grainy clips from doorbells and traffic cameras showed the same figure moving through the neighborhood between 1:30 and 2:15 a.m. He never ran, never hurried. He walked with purpose. What stood out most was what he did not do. He did not look around nervously. He did not hide his face. He did not check for cameras. He behaved like someone who knew he would not be stopped. Police released still images to the public. Tips flooded in. None led anywhere solid. Every lead collapsed under scrutiny. Then something unsettling emerged. A detective reviewing unsolved cases noticed similarities to another disappearance 3 years earlier in a nearby county. A woman named Rachel Moore, same age range, same profession, same time of night, same lack of forced entry. Her case had gone cold within weeks. When files were laid side by side, the patterns were impossible to ignore. Both women lived alone. Both worked overnight shifts. Both vanished between 1 and 3 a.m. Both homes were left undisturbed, and in both cases, neighbors reported a man calmly walking away. The task force expanded. The tone changed. This was no longer about one missing woman. This was about a method. Investigators began re-interviewing friends and coworkers. They searched for connections, shared acquaintances, dating apps, social circles, anything. Emily's coworkers described her as cautious, private. She rarely dated. She did not bring strangers home. She was the type to double-check locks and text when she arrived safely. One coworker mentioned something odd. Emily had once joked about a man who knew her schedule better than she did. Someone who always seemed to be outside the hospital during shift changes. She assumed he was security or maintenance. She never reported it. Security logs showed no such employee. Police pulled traffic camera footage near the hospital. Dozens of cars. Hundreds of faces. Nothing conclusive. Then came the voicemail. Emily's mother discovered it while replaying old messages. A voicemail from 2 weeks before the disappearance. An unknown number, no words, just breathing. .com, controlled, followed by a soft click. Phone records confirmed it. The call lasted 12 seconds. It was never traced. That changed everything. Investigators now believed Emily may have known her stalker, or at least recognized him. Someone close enough to earn trust. Someone who did not need to force a door. As days turned into weeks, the public grew restless. Media pressure increased. Online theories spiraled. Some blamed a serial predator. Others suggested an underground network. None were supported by evidence. Behind the scenes, detectives felt something worse. They were chasing a ghost who made no mistakes. No DNA, no vehicle, no digital trail. And then another woman disappeared. Different town. Same state, same hour. Her name was Laura Jensen. And this time, the man in the dark jacket was caught standing still on camera, directly under a streetlight. His face still unclear, but something else visible. He was smiling. The case officially became a multi-county investigation, and for the first time, police acknowledged what they had feared all along. This was not a coincidence. This was not chance. Someone was hunting carefully, slowly, patiently, and he was still out there. For years, the case slept in filing cabinets. Not because it was forgotten, but because it refused to move. 3 women gone. 3 lives erased without violence, without noise, without witnesses who could help. The break did not come from technology. It came from memory. In the spring of the 7th year, a newly assigned detective named Aaron Whitlock reopened the files. He had grown up in the same state. He remembered the headlines. He remembered the fear. What caught his attention was not what was missing. It was what repeated. Every disappearance happened on a weekday night. Every woman worked a job with predictable hours. Every home showed signs of careful entry, not force. Whitlock asked a simple question that had never been asked directly. Who would know all of that? He ordered a full review of witness statements that had been dismissed as minor. Not suspects, not tips. Background voices. One interview stood out. A hospital janitor had mentioned a man who used to sit in his car across the street during shift changes. Night after night, always alone, always watching the exit doors. He was never questioned again because sitting in a car was not a crime. Whitlock tracked down traffic citations near the hospital from that year. It took months, thousands of plates. One name kept appearing. Daniel Hargreave, mid-30s at the time. Local resident, no criminal record. Worked as a private medical transport contractor, a job that allowed him to move between hospitals, nursing homes, and private residences without question. He had access. He had schedules. He had reason to be invisible. When police ran his address, history something chilling appeared. Daniel had lived within 5 miles of all 3 women. Never at the same time, but always just before each disappearance. Surveillance footage was re-examined with his photo in mind. The posture matched. The walk matched. The calm did too. Still, there was no physical evidence. Then a former coworker came forward. She described Daniel as quiet, polite, forgettable. Until she noticed something strange. He kept notebooks, not schedules, not invoices, observations, times, patterns, routes. She once asked what they were for. He smiled and said, organization helped him sleep. A search warrant followed. Inside his current apartment, investigators found almost nothing. Clean, sparse, intentional. But hidden behind a false panel in a storage closet was a box. Inside were items that did not belong to him. A hospital badge that belonged to Emily Carter. A scarf later identified as Laura Jensen's. A keychain from Rachel Moore's hometown diner. Each labeled with dates. No blood, no weapons, no bodies. But possession was enough to change the case. Daniel was brought in for questioning. He did not ask for a lawyer. He sat calmly, hands folded, breathing slow. When shown the items, he did not deny them. He said they were gifts. He said the women trusted him. He said they left willingly. Investigators pushed harder. They asked where they went. Daniel tilted his head and said somewhere quiet. When asked if they were alive, he paused longer than before. Then he said they were safe. Hours passed. He never raised his voice. Never broke eye contact. Never contradicted himself. Without bodies, prosecutors hesitated. The case stalled again. But the media did not. Daniel's face went public. Tips flooded in from across the country. One came from a rural sheriff in another state. A man matching Daniel's description had once been stopped near a closed quarry late at night. He claimed he was lost. The deputy let him go. The quarry was searched. What they found changed everything. Personal items buried in sealed containers. Wrapped carefully, preserved, no remains. But evidence of finality. Maps were recovered. Routes marked. Locations circled, then crossed out. One location had not been crossed out yet. Daniel was arrested again. This time he asked for a lawyer. But it was too late. The case was no longer about proof of death. It was about intent. And investigators believed they were finally close to discovering what Daniel did with the women after they trusted him enough to open the door. Because one location remained unmarked, and satellite data showed recent activity there. Whatever waited at that site had been kept hidden for years. And Daniel knew police were coming. The road to the site was barely a road at all, a narrow stretch of dirt cutting through trees that had not been cleared in decades. Fog clung low to the ground, the kind that swallowed headlights and erased distance. Satellite data showed recent tire marks. Someone had been there within days. Investigators arrived just before dawn. What they found was not a grave. It was worse. A small structure stood at the edge of the clearing, half sunken into the earth, reinforced, soundproofed. Inside were signs of long-term habitation, a cot, a water system, food storage, locks on the outside of doors, and journals. Daniel Hargreave had written everything down, not names, not apologies, justifications. He believed he was rescuing them. He wrote about women who looked tired, lonely, predictable. He believed they were trapped in lives that no one noticed. He believed he was offering escape. He called it preservation. The journals detailed how he approached them. Never force, never threats, always kindness, always timing. He waited until routines softened caution, until familiarity replaced fear. A knock, a smile, a reason to trust. He convinced them to leave quietly, to step into a car without alerting anyone. He promised rest, safety, silence. For some, it lasted weeks. For others, months. The final entries grew darker. He wrote about resistance, about realization, about the moment when trust collapsed into terror. He wrote that this was when they became dangerous to themselves. He never used the word kill, but he wrote about endings. Search teams expanded outward from the structure. In a wooded area, less than a mile away, they discovered disturbed soil. Carefully covered, marked only by stones placed with intention. 3 sites. Remains were recovered, identified through dental records and DNA. Emily Carter, Laura Jensen, Rachel Moore. Families were notified one by one. Each call carried the same impossible weight. Relief and devastation bound together. The pain of knowing finally eclipsed only by the pain of what had been done. Daniel was confronted with the evidence. For the first time, he broke. Not with tears, with anger. He accused investigators of misunderstanding him. He said the women had agreed. He said the world had failed them first. He said he had only finished what life had already started. When asked why he kept the items, he smiled faintly. Proof of purpose. At trial, prosecutors focused on control, isolation, deception. They did not need to sensationalize. The facts were enough. The calm, planning, the repeated behavior. The belief that he had the right to decide who disappeared. Daniel was convicted on all counts. He received multiple life sentences without parole. In court, the families spoke. Emily's mother described waiting every night for a knock on the door. Laura's sister spoke about birthdays that never felt whole again. Rachel's father said the silence was the hardest part, not knowing where to place his grief. No one addressed Daniel directly. He was no longer the center of the story. Years later, the street where Emily lived looks ordinary again. New families, fresh paint, children riding bikes past a house that once held unanswered questions. But those who remember still check their locks at night, still hesitate before opening the door to a stranger. Still think about how quietly trust can be used as a weapon. Investigators now teach the case to new recruits, not as a lesson in violence, but in patience, in pattern recognition, in understanding that danger does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it knocks, and sometimes it waits for you to answer.